Imagine, just for a second, waking up tomorrow and realizing your mind isn't yours anymore.
That's a terrifying thought.
Right. Like imagine someone else is completely dictating your memories, your choices, your literal perception of reality.
Yeah, the ultimate loss of control.
Exactly. Now, what if I told you that isn't some, sci-fi movie pitch? It actually happened.
It did. And it was funded by the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah, which is just wild.
Yeah.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive, everyone. We are pulling back the curtain on something you've probably heard of in pop culture, but the reality is so much darker.
So much darker.
We're talking about the CIA's top secret MKUltra project.
Right. And, when people hear MKUltra, they usually think of, like, Hypno Assassins or Jason Bourne movies.
Oh, for sure. Hollywood loves it.
But the actual documented history, it started with a very sterile bureaucratic label, mind control research.
Right.
And it just completely devolved into this horrific series of incredibly dangerous, highly illegal human experiments.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to me, the concept of mind control, it's like the ultimate violation of privacy.
Absolutely.
I mean, you lock your doors at night, right? You use passwords for your emails.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But the idea that your own government was actively trying to figure out how to pick the lock to human consciousness, it makes my skin crawl.
It should. It absolutely should. But to really understand how this happened, how it got greenlit, we have to go back.
Back to the 1950s, right?
Yeah. We have to put ourselves in that specific headspace. You can't just judge it by today's standards. You have to transport yourself to the suffocating paranoia of the early Cold War.
Right. Coming right off the heels of World War II.
Exactly. The dust from the global war is settling, but the tension is still there. It just shifted.
It went invisible.
Yes. We moved into this era of ideological warfare, the U.S. versus the Soviet Union. And there was this very acute, very specific terror running through the intelligence community.
The fear of brainwashing.
Brainwashing, that was the buzzword.
I was reading through some of those declassified memos, and it wasn't just a vague fear. They were genuinely panicked.
Oh, they were terrified.
Yeah.
During the Korean War, you had American POWs who were captured, right?
Yeah.
And when some of them came back or when they appeared on these propaganda films, they were publicly denouncing the United States.
Like reciting communist talking points?
Exactly. And they were doing it with this blank, terrifying sincerity.
The whole Manchurian candidate thing.
Precisely. In fact, a journalist named Edward Hunter coined the term brainwashing right around this time to describe exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so the CIA sees these soldiers on tape, and they just freak out.
Total panic. They thought they had a massive intelligence gap. They actually believed the Soviet Union and China had unlocked the literal biological secrets of the human mind.
Like they could just erase a person's loyalty.
Yeah, just overwrite it like a magnetic tape.
It's so interesting how fear works on a national level. Because how does a democratic government justify doing the horrible things we're about to talk about?
By telling themselves the enemy is already doing it.
Exactly. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Well, they're doing it, so we have to do it to survive.
And that cycle officially peaked on April 13th, 1953.
That's the date, right?
That is the exact date CIA Director Allen Dulles formally signed off on MKUltra.
Just authorized it completely out of fear.
Pure fear. And he bypassed all normal funding channels. He basically gave the project a blank check and zero congressional oversight.
None at all, which is a recipe for disaster.
But the craziest part isn't even the funding, it's who Dulles put in charge.
Oh, right. Sidney Gottlieb.
Sidney Gottlieb.
Yeah.
He didn't pick a psychiatrist, he didn't pick a neurologist, he picked a chemist.
Which is just, it's like handing a mechanic a sledgehammer and telling them to fix a supercomputer.
That is a perfect analogy.
How does a chemist get the keys to the human mind? It literally sounds like an origin story for a comic book villain.
It really does. But Gottlieb viewed the brain entirely as a biological machine.
Just chemicals.
Right. Not as the seat of the soul or this complex web of memories. Just a machine that could be tweaked or balanced or just violently short-circuited if you use the right compounds.
And his favorite compound was LSD.
The newly synthesized hallucinogen, yeah.
But wait, I have to push back here. Even in 1953, psychology was a real field, right? Psychoanalysis existed. So was there any actual science behind this purely chemical approach? Or were they just, throwing darts in the dark?
They were totally operating on the bleeding edge of psychopharmacology, which was barely a field back then.
So they didn't really know what they were doing?
Not at all. LSD had just been discovered by Albert Hofmann in Switzerland a few years prior, and the CIA looked at this stuff and thought it was a miracle weapon.
Because it just completely shattered reality.
Right. Microscopic amounts could induce a total psychological break. So Gottlieb's theory was brutal, but simple.
Wiping the slate clean.
Yes. Chemically break down a subject's personality and then build a new, compliant one in the empty space.
That is so dark. And the scary thing is, this didn't just stay in some sterile lab.
No, it metastasized incredibly fast.
The records show it expanded into, 149 distinct sub-projects?
149 sub-projects, yeah. Dragging thousands of human subjects into it.
And this is where we have to talk about who they targeted. Because here's where it gets really horrific.
It's the ultimate example of unchecked power preying on the vulnerable.
Right. They didn't experiment on politicians or generals.
No, of course not. They went after people who are locked away, marginalized people.
We're talking federal prisoners,
Yes,
military personnel,
right, guys who had to follow orders.
and patients in psychiatric hospitals, people who couldn't say no. Or if they did complain, society would just dismiss them as crazy.
Exactly. And one of the most grim examples of this was at the Federal Drug Addiction Clinic in Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, the Dr. Harris's bill stuff. This part is just sickening.
It really is. The CIA was funneling money to Isbell, who was supposed to be treating heroin addicts.
Treating them.
Right, but the financial records show he was actually paying these incredibly vulnerable, addicted patients in heroin.
Paying them in the literal drug they were trying to get clean from.
Yes, in exchange for them participating in extreme LSD experiments.
I read he kept some guys on continuous heavy doses of LSD for over 70 days straight.
70 days. Can you imagine the biological toll? The psychological toll?
It's beyond torture. It's exploiting a disease to force compliance.
And completely without informed consent. That is the defining characteristic of all these demographics. Nobody knew what they were signing up for.
But the arrogance of the CIA didn't stop there. They eventually moved past the prisons and the hospitals.
They did. They moved on to everyday people.
Just ordinary citizens.
Which brings us to Operation Midnight Climax.
Ah, yes. Midnight Climax.
I mean, even the name sounds like a Pulp Fiction novel, but this was
Yeah.
heavily funded government reality.
It was. They set up these covert safe houses in cities like San Francisco and New York.
And they hired this guy, George Hunter White, to run them, who was, a narcotics officer? Yeah, an aggressive, totally unorthodox narcotics cop.
And the methodology they use here is just, it's bizarre.
It's completely chaotic. So White furnishes these safe houses to look like standard, slightly seedy apartments.
Right, bachelor pads.
He installs two-way mirrors, recording equipment, the whole 9 yards. And then he hires sex workers.
Okay, stop right there. The CIA hired sex workers.
Yes, using taxpayer money. They hired sex workers to lure unsuspecting men back to these apartments.
We're talking tourists, businessmen, just regular guys.
Just guys off the street. And once they were inside, the men were secretly dosed with LSD, usually just slipped into their cocktail.
So imagine you're just a guy having a drink, completely unaware you're a variable in a government mind control experiment.
And suddenly, your entire reality is shattering. You're having a massive psychedelic break.
While George Hunter White is literally sitting behind a two-way mirror, drinking martini and taking notes.
Taking notes on a portable toilet, actually. That's where he liked to sit.
That's psychological assault disguised as espionage.
And you have to ask, what was the scientific value here?
Exactly. Were they actually learning anything?
The CIA claimed they were testing how LSD could be used in the field, like to discredit diplomats or extract intel.
But the congressional investigations later proved it was useless,
It was
right?
completely useless. The data was garbage. It was just unregulated, chaotic voyeurism masquerading as national security.
And the scary part is, it wasn't just LSD.
Far from it.
The declassified documents show they were exploring a whole spectrum of psychological destruction.
They wanted to break the mind any way they could.
Let's talk about the sensory deprivation stuff.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't even use chemicals.
No, and it's particularly chilling. The CIA heavily funded research based on the theories of a Canadian psychologist named Donald Hebb.
Okay,
Hebb was doing extreme isolation experiments, and the CIA realized if you strip away a person's physical connection to reality,
like take away sight, sound, touch.
yeah, put them in a total isolation tank, the brain gets so starved for input, it starts to turn on itself.
It just fabricates reality.
Exactly. It induces profound hallucinations and extreme suggestibility, all without a single drop of a drug.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you had the brutal physical approach. the electroshock regimens.
Dr. Ewan Cameron in Montreal.
This guy, what I couldn't get over reading about Cameron is that he wasn't doing clinical therapy.
No, not at all.
He wasn't trying to help people with depression. He was using voltages that were way, way beyond medical norms.
Multiple times a day.
It was literally trying to fry the hardware of the brain. He called it de-patterning.
De-patterning. Cameron is such a crucial, dark figure in this. He believed that to cure a patient, you had to completely erase their memory and personality.
Turn them into a blank slate.
Yes. So he would put patients into these drug-induced comas for weeks at a time.
Weeks.
Weeks. He'd blast them with these massive electroshocks and then use this technique he called psychic driving.
Oh, the audio tapes.
Yeah. He'd play audio tapes with these repetitive, degrading messages, just looping thousands of times under their pillows while they slept in the coma.
Wait, I have to pause here. You're telling me Dr. Ewan Cameron, a respected man running a psychiatric institute, was literally torturing patients?
Yes.
And the medical community didn't flag this. How do you get away with that in a functioning hospital?
It comes down to the insidious nature of the CIA's funding. The medical community didn't know the CIA was behind it.
Front organizations.
Exactly. They used a front called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. So Cameron's hospital just thought they were getting this prestigious grant money from a philanthropy.
It's money laundering.
That's exactly what it is. Money laundering for human experimentation.
CIA brings the cash, and these academics provide the veneer of legitimate science.
And thousands of people got caught in that web.
But you know, when we say thousands of people, it's so easy for the brain to just gloss over it.
It just becomes a statistic.
Right. It loses its emotional weight. So to really understand the fatal arrogance of this project, we have to look at one specific tragedy.
Because the hubris didn't just hurt strangers.
No, it turned inward. It infected the agency itself. Which brings us to the story of Frank Olson.
Frank Olson's story is really where the runaway train finally derailed into the CIA's own living room.
Because Olson wasn't a random guy off the street. He was an insider.
A top-tier scientist, he was an expert in aerosolized biological weapons working out of Fort Detrick in Maryland.
Highly classified stuff.
Very. And he regularly collaborated with Sidney Gottlieb's team.
He sat at the table with them. He knew the secrets.
He knew everything. So in November of 1953, Gottlieb and several of these CIA and military scientists have this working retreat.
At a cabin, right?
Yeah, Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. Just a group of colleagues having dinner. But after dinner, without any warning, Gottlieb secretly slips a massive dose of LSD into a bottle of Cointreau.
And they pass the bottle around.
They pass it around, and Frank Olson drinks it.
Poisons his own colleague.
Completely without consent.
And the reaction Olson had, according to the records, it was catastrophic.
It wasn't just a bad trip. He suffered a complete, sustained psychological break.
The paranoia just took over. He was convinced he was going to be arrested, or that his own people were going to kill him.
He even tried to quit his job. But, I mean, you don't just walk away from top-secret bioweapons research.
So the CIA panics.
Major panic. They realize they've broken the mind of a man who holds their darkest national security secrets.
So they get him real psychiatric help, right?
No, of course not. Gottlieb sends Olson to New York to see an allergist.
An allergist.
A guy named Harold Abramson. Why an allergist? Because Abramson was secretly one of the CIA's covert LSD researchers.
They were just trying to keep the whole thing in-house, hide the mess.
Exactly, keep the circle tight.
But it ended in absolute tragedy.
Just a few days after that retreat, in the middle of the night, Frank Olson plummets to his death from the window of room 1018A at the Statler Hotel in Manhattan.
In the official ruling.
The CIA and the NYPD ruled it a suicide. They told his wife he just suffered a fatal nervous breakdown.
They completely omitted the fact that his own boss poisoned him.
Wrote it completely out of the narrative.
So what does this mean for the people on the inside? I mean, think about the banality of that evil.
It's chilling.
You go to a work retreat. You trust your colleagues. You dedicate your life to this agency, and suddenly your reality shatters because your employer treated you like a disposable petri dish.
It proves that within MK Ultra, absolutely no one was safe. The ethical boundaries didn't just dissolve, they never existed in the first place.
It really makes you wonder, reading these files, how many other suicides or accidents weren't what they seemed.
It's the ultimate problem with zero oversight. When an agency operates entirely in the shadows, collateral damage is just swept under the rug.
Frank Olson was collateral damage in a war his bosses were waging on his mind.
Yeah.
But with deaths like his, with all these people being tortured, the obvious question is, how did this stay hidden for over 2 decades.
Where was the paperwork?
Yeah, where are the audits?
Well, that brings us to the Great Erasure.
1973.
Let's fast forward to 1973. The political climate in America has radically shifted. The Cold War paranoia is still there, but now it's competing with domestic paranoia.
Watergate.
Watergate. The Nixon administration is collapsing. Investigative journalists are aggressively circling the intelligence community.
And CIA Director Richard Helms realizes the walls are closing in.
So he gives an order. He mandates a massive agency-wide bonfire. He orders the total destruction of millions of pages of MKUltra documents.
And the agency just complied.
They incinerated decades of research, operational logs, memos. They intentionally created a black hole in American history.
But I really want to push on this. Because if you're Richard Helms, and you're literally lighting federal documents on fire,
You know you're crossing a line.
a massive legal line. You're committing a massive crime to cover up another crime. What exactly were they so desperate to hide that burning the evidence felt like the safer bet?
They were hiding two things. First, the sheer scale of the atrocity. By burning those papers, they erased the identities of the victims.
So we'll never know the exact number of people hurt.
Never. We'll never know how many lives were permanently derailed. But the second thing they were hiding was the absolute failure of the science.
So it didn't work.
After 20 years and millions of dollars, they hadn't actually achieved reliable mind control. They just created chaos. And they were embarrassed.
But as we noted at the very beginning of this deep dive, they missed something.
Yes. The beauty of a massive bureaucracy is that someone always makes an administrative error.
They missed the receipts.
A 1977 Freedom of Information Act request uncovered about 20,000 pages of financial receipts that had been misfiled in a secondary storage facility.
You can burn the memos, but you can't erase the accountants.
Exactly. The accountants always keep a copy.
But here's the thing, those receipts only give us the scaffolding, right?
Right. They tell us who got paid, what chemicals were bought, where the safe houses were.
But they don't give us the clinical results. They don't tell us the final goals.
They leave a massive vacuum.
And when there's a vacuum in intelligence history, it immediately gets filled with speculation and theories.
Because researchers have spent decades trying to reverse engineer the truth from those receipts.
Which has led to what we can call the 4 pillars of paranoia. The 4 major theories about what MKUltra was really doing. Let's explore these.
Okay, the first theory addresses the ultimate goal. The idea that the CIA was trying to build a complete human weapon.
Back to the Manchurian candidate.
Exactly. Establishing total control so you could program someone to carry out an act. Like a courier who couldn't spill a secret even under torture because he didn't consciously know it.
Or an assassin who could be triggered by a phrase and then forget they ever pulled the trigger.
Right. And in the context of the 1950s, this theory makes terrifying administrative sense.
Spies were getting captured and broken behind the Iron Curtain. So the holy grail for the CIA would be an unbreakable operative.
Actually, the precursor to MKUltra, a project called Artichoke, had an explicitly stated goal to see if a person could be made to attempt an assassination against their will.
So the foundation for that theory is rock solid. But then there's theory number 2, the Frankenstein scenario.
This one is fascinating.
This is the one that really gets under my skin. Theory 1 is scary, sure, a calculated weapon. But theory 2 suggests that the extreme experiments simply spiraled completely out of control.
The terror of absolute incompetence mixed with absolute power.
All right, the idea that the people holding the steering wheel had actually snapped it off entirely. It's a runaway train of scientists who don't know how to stop the horror they started.
And the receipts support this. Look at the volume of LSD Sidney Gottlieb was buying.
Didn't he try to buy the entire world's supply?
He did. He tried to buy the entire global supply from the Sandoz laboratories in Switzerland.
That is not targeted microdose science.
No, they were flooding the zone. And when you mess with the delicate neurochemistry of the human brain with massive, untested variables, you don't get a programmable robot. You get unpredictable, violent chaos.
They lost control of the beast they built.
Highly probable.
Okay, theory 3, the secret missions. This one suggests they didn't just keep these subjects in labs, they actively deployed altered individuals into covert real-world operations.
Now, because of the 1973 document purge, we don't have a smoking gun for this. There's no undeniable proof.
But historically speaking, it's a very small, logical leap, right?
Very small. If you spend 20 years and millions of dollars building a weapon, eventually bureaucratic pressure demands a field test.
You don't build a hyper-expensive weapon just to leave it in the armory.
Exactly. And we do know they mandated the use of LSD as an offensive weapon in the field, so taking it a step further isn't a stretch.
Which brings us to the final theory, Theory 4, the high-level cover-up.
This one shifts away from the science and looks at the sociology of power.
It argues this wasn't just Sidney Gottlieb's rogue mad science project.
Right. It suggests officials far above him in the highest echelons of the government and the military-industrial complex were intimately aware and involved.
Because the CIA didn't operate in a vacuum.
They couldn't have. They collaborated with the military, they funneled money through elite universities, they partnered with big pharmaceutical companies.
The sheer logistical footprint required a vast network of complicity.
So when Richard Helms ordered that bonfire in 1973, he wasn't just protecting the CIA. He was protecting a much wider network of powerful, influential people in American society.
But eventually, even a runaway train hits a wall. The shadows couldn't hide a project this massive forever. Let's talk about the fallout.
Okay, so officially, MKUltra was scaled back and terminated in the late 1960s and early 1970s.
But the true turning point, the moment the public actually found out, was 1975.
1975 was a huge watershed moment.
The post-Watergate climate.
Yeah, people wanted accountability. Investigative journalists like Seymour Hersh were breaking huge stories about CIA domestic spying. And that pressure forced Congress to act.
They convened the Church Committee,
led by Senator Frank Church.
I was reading the transcripts from those hearings, and it is surreal. You have the chiefs of American intelligence being dragged into these bright committee rooms, forced to publicly admit to safe houses and LSD dosings.
MKUltra was finally violently yanked out of the shadows.
But we have to look past the political theater of the hearings. We have to focus on the human cost.
Because it wasn't just an administrative scandal. The project caused severe, irreversible psychological damage to an untold number of citizens.
People's minds were permanently fractured.
And on a macro level, it caused a massive breakdown of public trust.
You really have to wonder, when the very institutions built to protect you, funded by your taxes, decide you're just an expendable resource for a chemist's hypothesis, how do you ever rebuild that trust?
You really don't. It fundamentally rewrites the social contract between the state and the citizen.
Can you ever look at authority, or even your doctor, the same way again?
And the worst part is, the aftermath was deeply unsatisfying. It was, at best, a tragedy of partial justice.
Let's talk about that justice. Take Frank Olson's family, for instance. They didn't learn the truth until 1975.
Right. For over 2 decades, they thought he just had a random breakdown.
And then they find out his colleagues dosed him.
So they did receive a public apology in the Oval Office from President Gerald Ford, and they eventually got a financial settlement from the government.
And a few other victims who could conclusively prove they were experimented on got compensation too.
But many others never saw a dime. Because the documents were burned, thousands of victims couldn't prove what happened to them.
And let's be incredibly clear here. Nobody went to prison.
No one.
Sidney Gottlieb was never criminally prosecuted. Richard Helms wasn't prosecuted for the experiment.
No criminal accountability whatsoever.
And even for the people who did get a settlement check, financial compensation doesn't buy back your sanity.
It doesn't rewind the clock. It doesn't return the decades lost to trauma or induce paranoia or being institutionalized.
It's a massive, dark stain on history.
But it's not just historical trivia, it is a glaring, permanent warning.
Distilling everything we've talked about today, MKUltra is a monument to what happens when absolute power operates in absolute secrecy.
It shows how easily human life and dignity and consciousness itself can be reduced to just a sterile bureaucratic metric when you remove oversight.
It's terrifying. The project was born in the Cold War, sure, but the bureaucratic mechanisms that let it happen, those are timeless.
Absolutely timeless.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final unsettling question to mull over.
We know the official narrative.
Right. We know the files were incinerated in 1973. We know the Church Committee exposed the remnants in 75. And MKUltra was supposedly shut down.
But consider the massive leaps in technology since then.
We have moved way beyond clumsy doses of LSD. We are in an era of advanced neurotechnology, algorithmic manipulation, and incredibly sophisticated psychological profiling.
So you have to ask.
Is a project born out of that much absolute power and that much desperation for control ever truly over?
Or is the chilling reality that it didn't end at all?
Did it merely evolve, change its name, upgrade its technology, and is it operating quietly, seamlessly somewhere in the shadows right now?
Think about that the next time you wonder who is really pulling the levers of your reality.